The woman in bloody scrubs ran out of the clinic with red prints on her sleeves. A patrol cruiser swung onto the curb. The officer drew his weapon before he closed his door. He shouted for her to drop. She tried to point back at the open door behind her. She tried to say 2 words about a boy on her table inside. He did not listen. He slammed her chest first onto the hot hood. Her cheek printed blood on white paint. Her hands were cuffed in 9 seconds. Across the street, a pastor lifted his phone. Inside, on a steel table, a 16-year-old boy was bleeding out with his chest already cracked open. The only other surgeon on call was 20 minutes out. She had 90 seconds to make this officer hear her before the boy died. Would you stay quiet under that knee? Stay close. Her name was Dr. Imani Booker. She was 38 years old. She had been a trauma surgeon for 11 years. She ran a free Sunday clinic on the south side of Atlanta. The clinic sat between a closed barbershop and a laundromat with a flickering sign. 2 blocks east, a teenager had been shot in the chest at a bus stop just before dawn. His friend dragged him 3 streets over and pounded on her clinic door at 6 in the morning. The boy was 16. His name was Marcus Hill. He had a paper route. He had a younger sister. He had a math test on Monday. She did not know any of that yet. She only saw the wet hole in his shirt and the gray color rising in his lips. She called for her nurse, Linda. Linda was already pulling gloves. They moved him to the back table. Imani cut his shirt open in 1 stroke. The blood came up fast and dark. She knew the bullet had nicked something close to his heart. She knew the boy would die in her clinic if she did not open his chest. A free Sunday clinic is not built for this kind of work. It is built for sprained ankles and ear infections and free flu shots. But she had her hands. She had a small surgical tray she kept locked in a cabinet for nights exactly like this. She cracked his sternum in under a minute. She found the bleeder. She put a clamp on it. The monitor beeped steady for the first time since he came in. She told Linda to call Dr. Vance, the only other surgeon on the Sunday roster. Linda picked up the phone. Outside in that same minute, a different call was coming in. A neighbor near the bus stop had heard the gunshots. The neighbor had seen a figure running south. A patrol officer named Brent Ridley was first on the radio. He was 23. He had been on the force for 19 months. He took the call and gunned his cruiser through 3 red lights. He was looking for a person on foot, bloody, possibly armed. The suspect was last seen heading toward a strip of low building 2 blocks from a free clinic. His radio called the suspect male. His mind heard the word suspect. His eyes were already searching for any moving body in scrubs or jeans. Inside the clinic, Imani realized she had left her phone in her car. She needed it. She needed it to send a photo of the boy's chest to Dr. Vance so he could pre-brief on his drive-in. Every minute mattered. She told Linda to keep pressure on the field. She stripped her outer gloves but kept her scrubs on. Her Crocs were spattered. Her sleeves were soaked through. She pushed the door open and stepped into the cold morning light. Her car was 12 feet from the door. She did not even see the cruiser come around the corner. The cruiser stopped at an angle. The officer threw the door open. He had his weapon out before his foot hit the asphalt. He saw a woman in bloody scrubs at a dead run toward a parked car. His brain did not see a surgeon. His brain saw a fleeing suspect with blood on her clothes, outside the only building on the block with an open door. He yelled at her to stop. She stopped. He yelled at her to put her hands up. She put them up. She tried to speak. She said the word doctor. She said the word patient. She said the word inside. He did not hear any of it. He told her to turn around. She turned around. He told her to walk backward. She walked backward 4 steps. She tried again. She said, please. She said, there is a boy. She said, his chest is open. Each word made him grip harder. To him, those words sounded like a panic, a story, a lie. He had been trained that suspects lie. He had not been trained for the other kind of voice. He grabbed her left wrist. He yanked it down. He drove her chest first against the hood of his cruiser. The metal was hot from the engine. Her cheekbone hit the paint. A line of blood from her sleeve smeared in a crescent under her chin. She heard her own breath rasp against the metal. Across the street, a pastor named Curtis Bailey had just stepped out of his church van with a tray of donuts for his Sunday school. He saw the slam. He froze for 1 second. Then he raised his phone. He started recording at an angle that caught the cruiser, the woman, the open clinic door, and the bloody footprints leading from that door to her car. His hand shook. His thumb kept the red dot live. He did not say a word. He did not move from his spot for the first long minute. He just held the phone steady and let the lens see what he was seeing. A 911 operator named Renee Carver was already on the line from the clinic. Linda had dialed for an ambulance the moment Imani went outside, knowing they needed a real hospital next. Renee had her headset on. She was typing the address into her screen. Then she heard, through the open clinic line, a woman's voice screaming outside about a boy. She heard a man's voice yelling for hands. She heard a body hit metal. She kept the line open. She started a second recording on her supervisor channel. She typed 3 words into the dispatch log. Officer. Clinic. Now. Her finger hovered over the supervisor button for 2 long seconds. Then she pushed it down hard. The clinic camera above the front sign had been recording all morning. It was a cheap dome with a wide lens and a tiny red light. It caught Imani stepping out. It caught her hands going up. It caught the cruiser door swinging open. It caught the slam. It caught the officer's knee pressing into the small of her back. It caught the exact moment she turned her face toward the camera and mouthed 2 words at the lens. Save him. Save him. The little red light did not blink. It just stared back at her. It was the only thing on that block that was looking at her face and not her sleeves. Inside, Linda was alone with Marcus. The clamp was holding. The monitor was steady. But Marcus needed fluids she did not have. He needed a unit of blood she could not give. He needed a chest tube she had never placed on her own. Linda was a nurse. She was a good one. She was not a surgeon. She watched the door for Imani. The door did not open. She heard shouting from outside. She did not understand the words. She did not let go of the field. She kept both hands on the artery, and she counted her own breaths to stay steady. The officer pulled the cuffs tight around Imani's wrists. She felt the metal cut into the skin under her thumb. He pressed his knee harder. He told her to stop resisting. She was not resisting. She was breathing through her nose because her mouth was against the hood. She tried one more time. She said her name. She said the word surgeon. She said the address of the clinic and the number on the door 3 feet from his cruiser. He did not look up at the sign. He did not look at the open door. He did not look at the small red camera light. He had a suspect. He had cuffs. He had a story in his head, and he was finishing it. This is the moment I want you to think about. 3 different cameras were rolling. Not one of them was helping the boy on the table inside. The pastor's phone, the clinic camera, the dispatcher's audio. Every second of this would be public by sundown. But none of those seconds were closing the chest of a 16-year-old boy. The only person who could close that chest was bent over the hood of a cruiser with her cheek in her own blood. The clock did not care. The clock kept moving. The monitor inside the clinic did not care either. It just kept its number, and that number was about to start falling. Then something strange happened. The officer stepped back. He did not let her up. He did not take the cuffs off. He just stepped back 1 pace to call in the arrest on his shoulder radio. His voice came down a notch. His knee left her spine. She felt the air on her back. For 3 seconds, she thought she was about to be heard. She thought he had finally registered the door, the sign, the boy. She thought the worst part was over. She lifted her cheek off the hood half an inch. She turned her head a quarter inch toward him. She drew in air to speak in a normal voice for the first time since he arrived. She thought the storm had passed. She was wrong. The storm had only paused to draw a breath. If you're still with me, hit that subscribe button. The radio crackled back at him with 3 words. Suspect. Female. Black. He heard those 3 words, and his hand went to her shoulder again. The pause was over. Not because she had failed to explain. Because the radio had confirmed his story to him. The story he came with. The story he was going to leave with. He pushed her back down on the hood. Harder this time. Her chin hit metal. A new line of her own blood ran down the white paint of the cruiser. The camera caught that too. So did the pastor's phone. So did the dispatcher's open line. 3 lenses on one wrong story, and not one of them able to stop it from happening. Inside the clinic, the monitor changed its tone. Linda heard the pitch shift before her eyes moved. She looked up. The clamp had slipped a quarter inch. A new line of red was filling the field. Marcus's blood pressure was dropping fast. Linda put both hands in his chest and pressed where she had seen a Manny press. She felt the pulse of a small artery against her thumb. She held it there. She could not hold it forever. Her arms started to shake at the elbow within 40 seconds. She called Imani's name out loud into the empty clinic. Nobody answered. The boy's left hand twitched once and then went still on the table. Across the street, Pastor Curtis Bailey did something else. He kept the phone recording with his left hand. With his right hand, he pulled out his older flip phone and called his nephew. His nephew worked the morning desk at a local news station 3 miles away. He told his nephew, very simply, to get a camera to this corner in the next 10 minutes. He gave the address twice. Then he started walking slowly across the street, with the phone still recording, the donuts forgotten on the hood of his van. He did not run. He did not yell. He walked steady, like a man going to a pulpit. Dr. Vance, the other surgeon on call, was 18 minutes out. He was on a back road in his pickup. His radio was on a country station. His phone was face down on the passenger seat. He did not like to be bothered before his second coffee. He did not know yet that he was needed. He was driving in. He was not driving fast. The pickup rolled past a barn with a tin roof and a herd of slow black cows in a wet field. The wind through his open window smelled like turned earth and rain on grass. He did not know that a boy was dying. He did not know that a colleague was bleeding on a cruiser hood. He was thinking about pancakes. The dispatcher, Renee Carver, finally got her supervisor on the line. She told him in 11 words what she was hearing. She used the words officer, surgeon, clinic boy, and now. Her supervisor was a man named Henry Cole. Henry had been on the desk for 22 years. He had heard a lot of bad calls. He had not heard this one before. He picked up his own radio and put out a code to every car within 4 blocks. He did not call it an officer needs help call. He called it something different. He called it a code review. A code review meant another officer needed to roll, not to back up the officer on scene, but to check on the officer on scene. 2 minutes out, a sergeant named Maria Ortega heard that code. She hit her lights. The first chapter of this story had been the slam. The second chapter was about to be the arrival. But in between those 2 chapters, 3 things had already changed forever. The pastor was walking with a live camera. The dispatcher had logged the call as a code review. The clinic camera had caught a black woman in Scrub's mouth, the words "save him" at her own front door. The city was waking up. The video did not exist yet on the internet. It existed in 3 phones, 1 cloud server, and 1 supervisor's screen. By noon it would exist on 6 million screens. By Monday morning, it would exist on every screen in the country. None of that was helping Marcus Hill yet. But it was about to. The wind began to pick up across the parking lot. A storm was rolling in from the west, and the sky over the clinic was turning the color of slate. Sergeant Maria Ortega rounded the corner with her lights on. She did not use her siren. She had been a sergeant for 9 years and a beat officer for 11 before that. She had been called to 100 scenes like this. She had learned to roll in quiet. She saw the cruiser. She saw the angle. She saw the open clinic door. She saw the bloody footprints between the door and the car. She read those footprints in 2 seconds. Footprints out of a building, not into a building. A person who lived inside that building, not a person fleeing into it. Her hand went to her radio before her foot hit the asphalt. The first heavy raindrops began to spot the white paint of Ridley's hood. She walked up to Officer Ridley with her hands open and her voice low. She said his name first. She said it twice. She told him to step back from the suspect. She used the word suspect on purpose so he would not feel cornered. He stepped back half a step. She moved between him and Amani. She bent down. She looked at Amani's face. She saw the cheekbone, the blood, the scrubs, the ID badge clipped to the collar that he had not turned over. She read the badge. It said Booker. It said MD. It said attending trauma surgeon. It said the name of the clinic 3 feet away. Maria closed her eyes for 1 second. She opened them. She moved. She uncuffed Amani in 7 seconds. She helped her stand. She did not apologize yet. She knew apology was for later. Now was for the boy. She asked one question. Where? Amani pointed at the open door. Maria ran. She did not wait for Ridley. She went through the door at a flat sprint with her hand on her radio, calling for ambulance, calling for backup, calling for the supervisor to know she was off radio for 90 seconds. She did not draw her weapon. She had seen the footprints. She had seen Linda's face in the doorway. Linda was crying without sound. Linda had both hands inside a boy's chest. Linda's elbows were shaking now, in a small, steady rhythm she could not stop. The rain had thickened. It hit the cruiser roof in a low metal hiss. The pastor across the street finally lowered his phone for 1 second and wiped the lens on his shirt. Then he raised it again. He had been holding his arm up so long that his shoulder had started to burn. He did not care. He kept the lens steady. He had grown up in a small church in Alabama. He had been taught that a witness who looked away was the same as a witness who never came. Maria did 3 things in the next 30 seconds. She put her own gloved hands on top of Linda's, so Linda could relax her elbows without losing the artery. She got on the radio. She gave the ambulance a 1-minute warning and a chest open status. She called out to Amani, who was now coming through the door with her cuffs gone, the blood on her sleeves still fresh, and a new red mark on her cheek from the cruiser hood. Amani washed her hands at the sink for 11 seconds. She came to the table. She put her hands back inside the boy. She found the clamp. She tightened it. The pressure on the monitor stopped falling. It hung. Then it climbed back up 2 points. Linda exhaled a sound that was almost a laugh and almost a sob. 18 minutes after the slam, Dr. Vance pulled into the lot in his pickup. He saw a cruiser at a wrong angle. He saw a pastor on the sidewalk with a phone. He saw a sergeant standing in the doorway, waving at him to run. He ran. He came into the clinic with his jacket still on and his second coffee in his hand. He set the coffee down on a folding chair. He took one look at Amani's face at the table, at the boy, and at the clamp she had placed. He whistled once, low through his teeth. He said her name with something like awe. He said, Amani, who taught you that? She said, you did. 3 years ago. In Bay 2. He laughed without smiling. He put his hands in next to hers. Together they held the bleeder until the paramedics came through the door. The rain on the roof of the clinic was steady now. A bucket near the back door began to drip in a soft, slow rhythm under a leak in the gutter. Nobody had time to move it. The drip became the metronome of the next 4 minutes. Amani's hands moved with it. Doctor. Vance's hands moved with it. Linda counted under her breath with it. The boy on the table breathed with it. Drip. Beat. Drip. Beat. The ambulance crew loaded Marcus in 7 minutes. He was alive when he left the clinic. He had a chance. That chance had been bought with 90 seconds under a knee, 11 seconds at a sink, and one sergeant who read footprints right. Manny rode with the ambulance to the trauma center. She was not going to let go of his hand until another set of hands at a real hospital took him. She sat on the small jump seat in the back. She kept her thumb on the pulse at his wrist for the whole ride. The siren above her head sounded like a small, steady scream. The lights through the back window painted the ceiling red and white and red and white. The paramedic across from her did not say a word. He just kept squeezing the bag in his hand. The boy under her thumb kept breathing. Doctor. Vance stayed behind. He talked to Sergeant Ortega for a long time on the sidewalk in the rain. Pastor Curtis Bailey crossed the street again and stood with them. He stopped his recording. He had 8 minutes of video on his phone. He had not deleted a second of it. He did not plan to. Officer Brent Ridley sat in the back of his own cruiser with the door open and his head in his hands. Sergeant Ortega had not arrested him. She had told him to sit. She had told him not to leave. She had told him to think about what he had done. He was 23 years old. He was crying. He was not crying for himself yet. He was crying because somewhere in the last 6 minutes, while he held a knee on a surgeon, he had finally heard the word doctor. He had finally seen the open door. He had finally read the sign above his head. He was crying because he had almost killed a boy he never saw by holding down the only person who could have saved him. The rain dripped from the brim of his uniform cap onto the asphalt between his boots. He did not wipe his face. He did not lift his head. He had a wife at home who was 4 months pregnant. He had a father who was a retired officer in another state. He did not know what he was going to say to either of them. He did not know what he was going to say to himself. So he sat. He listened to the rain. He waited for the rest of his life to start. By 11 that morning, the pastor's video was on the internet. By noon, it had 1 million views. By 3 in the afternoon, both the clinic camera and the dispatcher audio had been released by the city, faster than anyone expected. The mayor stood in front of microphones at 5. She did not make excuses. She announced an immediate independent review. She announced a hard rule. Every officer responding to a suspect call within 4 blocks of any clinic or hospital would identify the building before identifying the suspect. They named it Booker's Rule. Manny did not ask for that. She was still in scrubs at the trauma center, holding Marcus's mother's hand in a waiting room, when she heard the announcement on a TV mounted in the corner. She did not cry. She nodded once. She kept holding the mother's hand. Marcus's mother was a woman named Yvette Hill. Yvette worked 2 jobs. She cleaned office buildings at night and stocked shelves at a grocery store on weekends. She had not slept for 30 straight hours. Her hand in Manny's hand was rough from bleach and from cardboard. She kept saying thank you in a whisper every few minutes. Manny kept saying he's going to be fine in a whisper every few minutes back. They sat that way for hours. They watched the news on mute. They did not need the sound to know what the country was seeing. Marcus Hill came out of surgery at the trauma center 6 hours later. He kept his heart. He kept his lungs. He kept his life. He woke up on Tuesday morning and asked for his mother and for his math book. His mother brought both. His sister drew a picture of the clinic with a red door and a heart over it. Manny came by his room every day for a week. She told him about his chest. She told him about the scar he would have. She told him it would be a good scar. He said, the kind that makes a girl ask questions. She laughed for the first time in 7 days. She held his hand until he fell back asleep. The math test got pushed to the next Monday. He took it from his hospital bed. He scored a 94. His sister taped the test paper to his bed rail with a piece of medical tape from the cart. She drew a star next to the highest score in red marker. She wrote the word brother under it in careful block letters. The nurses left the test up for the rest of his stay. Officer Ridley was placed on unpaid leave that night. He was not fired right away. The city wanted the review first. The review took 11 weeks. During those weeks, Ridley did not go on television. He did not give one quote to one reporter. He did not let his union write a single defense statement in his name. He sat in his small apartment near the rail yard. He watched the 8-minute video on his laptop every night before he went to bed. He kept a small notebook on the table next to the laptop. He wrote one sentence in the notebook every night. He never showed that notebook to anyone. He never threw it away either. In the 11th week, Ridley walked into the Free Sunday Clinic in plain clothes, with his hat in his hand, and asked the front desk if Dr. Booker would see him for 5 minutes. She said yes. She brought him into her small office. She did not offer him coffee. He sat down. He cried again. He said the words, "I am sorry." He said them small. Then he said them clear. He said he had read every page of the review. He said he did not deserve to wear the uniform again. He said he wanted to know what she wanted him to do with the rest of his life. She looked at him for a long moment. She said, "You go learn. You go learn the things you did not learn the first time. You go learn names. You go learn doors. You go learn that a black woman in scrubs at 6 in the morning, outside a clinic with her name on the door, is a black woman in scrubs outside a clinic with her name on the door. You go teach that to every young officer in this city for the rest of your working life. Then you come back here in 20 years and tell me how it went." He nodded. He did exactly that. He left the badge. He never asked for it back. He taught at the academy for 2 decades. He stood in front of every new class on their first morning. He played 8 minutes of the pastor's video. He did not say a word until it was over. Then he turned the lights back on. He looked at the new class. He said one sentence. He said, "The woman on that hood was the only person who could save the boy in the building, and I almost killed that boy by holding her down." Every new class went very quiet. Every new class understood. Every new class wrote something in a notebook before they went back to their desks. The video did not let the city look away. The boy lived. The sergeant got promoted. The pastor got a small church grant for a new van. The dispatcher got a commendation she put in a drawer. She said she had only done her job. The clinic stayed open every Sunday morning. The clinic doubled its volunteer roster in 6 weeks. 3 more attending surgeons signed on to cover the Sunday call after they saw the video. A donor pool from the city paid for a real chest tray, a real ventilator, and a real blood fridge. The Free Sunday Clinic was now ready for a Sunday that nobody wanted to come. But if it came, the clinic would be ready. That was Imani's only condition for any of the money. Ready for the next boy. Ready for the next door. Ready for the next 90 seconds. Imani Booker still walks out that front door every Sunday at 6 in the morning in her scrubs and her Crocs. She looks up at the small red camera light above her sign before she goes inside. She nods at it once. She goes to work. She has not lost a Sunday patient since. Marcus Hill graduated high school the next spring. He went to college on a small scholarship from a local foundation that none of the news cameras ever reported. He is studying to be a paramedic now. He plans to come back to the south side of Atlanta after he finishes. He plans to work the Sunday shift at a clinic with a red door.